Today is the three things a man fears most when it comes to being in a relationship with a woman. Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Want to welcome Robert Manni back to our program, the author of the Guys Guide to Love and host of Guys Guy Radio. Thank you, Robert, for being here again.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here with you, Silka, and hopefully we can help out some of the folks out there.
Yeah, today I again, as we, as I do, we run across these articles that I think are worth discussing as it pertains to what men want women to know. And today is the three things a man fears most when it comes to being in a relationship with a woman. And there's lots of titles like that, but for some reason I was drawn to this one because there are some deep things here that I honestly I didn't think about quite the way that it's being positioned here. So I want to get your opinion on that. The first one being that probably one of the biggest fears to be, being with one, being in a relationship, is the fear of rejection, because men are confronted with that so much more, as he says here, than women are. Let's talk about that, the fear of rejection.
Well, when you look at all of these things, some of the things that people fear, it's not just necessarily men. Women have fears also. It's like we're human. So I think we need to be careful to identify and acknowledge the differences between the various sexes and the theys and the he's and the she's, etc., but also acknowledge the similarities, because after all, we're all human, we're all connected. So number one, rejection. I mean, nobody really looks forward to rejection. I think in terms of experiential, I agree with the author in that a lot of times men put themselves out there, whether it's dating or in other areas where you put yourself on the line. I think in the dating scene today, it's too easy because you're doing it online. It's very impersonal for the most part. But in the old days, you had to go up and say, "Hi, my name is Larry. Can I buy you a drink?" and really approach somebody. And there's not as much of that going on. So fear of rejection is for sure. People, men particularly, have to like suck it up to go out there and approach a woman, even if it's online. But nobody likes to be rejected. So I think it's a necessity. It's something that nobody likes, but it actually builds character. So rejection is part of the game. So I think the message is, don't take it personally, but men don't like rejection because like who likes rejection? Nobody. Yeah. So.
Well, here's what I think a big part of the message is as it pertains to women. And again, this is, what women need to know or should know about men and how it's handled. Yes, men they do face rejection more simply because of, the way the gender roles go. But it's the delivery of the rejection that is so important to maybe be a little bit more aware of. That the callous no's or just the plain old rude rejection. And I'm not getting down on women here. This goes both ways. Men can be incredibly rude as well, and that's a whole other topic. But like he gives an example here that some women, I'd never date a guy like you, or come on, are you kidding me, or just kind of laugh. I mean, I've seen this. I have honestly seen this, and reading in this article has reminded me of that how callous some women can be, especially in a bar setting or something. And that is something that can stay with you the rest of your life. And you don't realize what kind of an influence you might have made on this person or men in general of how they treat women later. Now, I'm not saying you're a victim or need to stay in victim mode, but I thought that part was pretty profound. What do you think?
Well, yeah, sure. Men have feelings. It's not like we're all Sasquatch wandering around in the woods. We're humans. Occasionally we are, but we have feelings, and having the gentle touch to quote unquote reject a man is warranted, I think, because you don't want to really hurt anybody. Maybe you don't want to date them, but hey, they could turn into be a good friend or somebody who might have contacts that you get to know somebody else through. So it's always good to be nice to other people. whether you're going to elect to want to date them or not. Just be nice. I think the other thing that's not mentioned here is the whole ghosting thing. Now, of course, when you're doing online dating, it's very easy to delete or ghost somebody. But if you've had a connection, you probably want to take that extra step to let somebody down gently if there's no sparkles there or whatever. So I would suggest for the ladies out there, and also for the men, be gentle with other people. If they're not in your wheelhouse, they're not somebody you want to spend time with. Don't make them feel like they're inferior, that there's something wrong with them, because everybody is in the same situation at some time or another, where we all get rejected, whether it's in sales, whether it's in dating, whether it's just from your friends. You're going to get rejected. So be mindful of that and be kind to other people whenever you can.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen it or heard it, I said, or read it on this channel, like in some of our comments, to where there's a lot, and we get this quite frequently, when men will just be just some ugly comments about, oh, what do these women over 50 think that they're going to date now? Well, they should have paid attention to us when they were in their 20s. And there's stuff there that's really stuck. And again, while I don't endorse being in victim mode, because that doesn't help anybody, I would like women to maybe just think about that for a minute. Have you ever done that? Do you tend to do that? Think about that, because it can really affect someone profoundly. So we won't dwell on that, but I felt like it was important to mention that. The second, irrelevance, that men just fear becoming irrelevant, that as he writes here, that men thrive on relevance, whether it's meaningful work, being a good family man, a good provider, and being a good husband, and just satisfying a woman in a relationship. Let's talk about irrelevance, Robert.
Well, I think it's a critical issue for anybody. Again, both men and women. Nobody wants to feel like they're not wanted or not important, or they just don't matter. Particularly for the male ego. And we all know that males have big egos for the most part, and they're driven by ego. And in some ways, they need to have an ego to deal with our 3D competitive society, Western society that we live in. So it's understandable. So when a man feels like I'm not relevant anymore, it's like a sign of like I'm not respected, I'm not valued. It has so many waves that go along with it. So we have to be careful, and particularly with guys, with the boomer guys, some of them are like, getting out of the corporate workforce, and some of them are desperate to stay there because they haven't taken the time to really acknowledge the fact that I'm more than my job, I'm more than my wallet, I'm more than what power I have right now, because ultimately, we're all naked in the end. So I think everybody needs to be sensitized to the fact that, we're all valuable, and nobody wants to feel like they're irrelevant. It all comes down to, Silka, I think, the person's self valuation. That it's very important for people to understand that they do have value, and not to be disturbed by other people's maybe sending a vibe that they don't count anymore. One time I was between jobs in the advertising industry, and I ran into a former colleague who worked for a magazine, and she came up to me in Union Square, and she said, I hadn't seen her for a while. She said, "Hey, Bob, how are you? Where are you now?" And I said, well, I'm right here. And she goes, "How about with the work?" I said, "Well, I'm between things." She literally turned and walked away before I had the sentence out of my mouth, because I was irrelevant to her, because she couldn't sell me any ad space. And I laughed to myself, though it felt, it was like a knife initially, but then I laughed because how ridiculous. But that's how it is. So I think, again, women have to be mindful of the fact that guys have fragile egos, and men have to be sensitized to the fact that not to take everything so personally.
Yeah. Well, and when it comes to irrelevance or becoming irrelevant, especially as we age, for women, that's an even bigger subject. It's not the topic of today's segment. This is about men and what us women need to, understand, especially if we're in a relationship. And some really good examples he gives there is like making statements like, "I'm better off without you," like if you're in a fight, or, "You never do anything around here. All you do is go to work and come home." And sometimes we just don't realize what sort of effect that actually has. And as he points out here, that what's interesting about being appreciated in our culture in relationships is that there's a built-in appreciation for women, that to get gifts, to get flowers, to it's expected for men to do that, where there isn't really that's not for men. Like he asks you, have you ever given your guy flowers, or or those kind of funny, or sexy underwear? And I don't know about that, Robert. I don't know if sexy underwear would make you feel better, but it's a good thing to think about. There isn't that built-in appreciation, and maybe we can take that extra step. Any other
I have
thoughts
this
on that?
vision of this leopard print thong thing, and I'm like, no, my sorry.
No, it's fine. But the point is that maybe if we just hear this, we become a little bit more aware. Because as he points out, if you don't feel irrelevant at home, you're going to go out and seek relevance somewhere else. And unfortunately, that is true. Also for women. Again, another topic for another segment. But I thought this was interesting. So the need to be acknowledged is real, and
Sure.
needs to be recognized. Lastly, disappointment. Disappointing someone is what I'm trying to say. Being, ultimately being a disappointment as a man, that is a huge fear in relationships. Talk to me about that.
Also true, and I think also the door swings both ways there. But I see some of the quotes that the writer made, like you're a poor excuse for a husband or boyfriend. You're never around when I need you. You don't understand my needs. You let me down all the time. A lot of guys have heard that. A lot of guys have deserved to hear, to be made aware of that aspect. But words, the way, the tone, and how they come out is important. And guys, again, have sometimes they're ego driven, and the ego can be fragile, and nobody likes criticism. And even if it's constructive criticism, people have a tendency in this day and age to take everything the negative way first before taking it in a positive way. So I think I think the ladies, if they were careful about counting it to three before they say certain things, that would go a long way. And I think for men also, of course, but today's discussion is about women, things to say to men. But I agree completely that when a guy feels like he's a loser, that's not a good thing. And it's not good for the relationship either.
Right. Well, and again, when I read this is, I don't think women realize how much they can actually hurt a man with their words, because men won't admit it. We don't have, at least in my opinion, that we don't have those conversations to where somebody admits that they're real. This, because that makes them weak in their mind. And I'm asking you, but that's my perception. And are our expectations, I'm talking to women now, are your expectations realistic? What you have from the man you're with. So again, lots to think about here.
I think the issue is empathy, that we all have to understand that life is not easy, particularly these days, and we should, when we can, give our partner the benefit of the doubt, because obviously we're with a partner. A partner is a commitment in a certain aspect. So if we're with a partner that we're going to learn that they have some flaws, let's work with them as best we can. And if it's intolerable, then you have to take action. But just insulting somebody else or making them feel like they're a loser, that's not going to help anybody. So I would say, be careful. We all have to be careful in what we say, because words, have a lot of power.
They really do. It's a great reminder of that. One theme that sort of seemed to run through this article, that I don't know if it's a question to you. I don't know if I agree or disagree, but that all of this is fear of disappointment, etc., is tied somehow to, or that women somehow tie it to not putting out, or making sex somehow tied to the behavior that men exhibit. Did you get that feeling at all when you read this?
I think really the issue becomes when we hurt other people, it's because of how we've been hurt and our own feelings of being wronged or hurt, and we lash out at other people. And you see that when there's violence all the time. A lot of it's about the person has endured an incredible amount of hurt. And if we look at things that way, sometimes we can be a little bit more empathetic. to the other person, because realize, wow, they must be really be hurting to behave like this, versus you have to do the dishes or you're not getting anything tonight. So I would suggest for men out there, do the dishes. I do the dishes all the time. And not that it does me any good, but I still do the dishes anyhow, because my wife's a great cook. And so I figure, how can I chip in? I get great food all the time. We love to eat at home because we get good, wholesome food. I do the dishes. So, you know, for guys out there, chip in. No matter how busy you are, chip in and do some of those menial tasks, because they're actually good for you, and you might get a little more if you do.
Yes. Well, and on that, Robert, let's end it by saying that, you know, do think about this. I'll link to the article and just see if you've talked to the women now. If you've done this, does this make sense? And again, totally recognize this goes both ways. Get that. That's not what this, you know, today is about. Think about how we as women contribute to this and how we can actually make our man feel better. So thank you again. I always love having you on. Love the Guy's Guy perspective. I will link to your book, to your radio show, which is now all over the world. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on your on our next segment on Second Act TV.
Thank you, Silke. Thank you, everybody.